Hi everyone, and welcome back to Bowdie Shorts, making law make sense in 15 minutes or less. Today we're looking at one of the most important concepts in the whole of trust law, fiduciary duties. In our previous videos, we've seen that trustees have enormous powers. They can control trust property, manage investments, exercise discretions, and distribute trust assets. To the outside world, trustees often look exactly like the owners of the property. But that's actually where the danger lies, because whenever somebody has power over somebody else's property, there is always the temptation to use that power for personal gain. So today's question is, what stops trustees putting themselves first? And the answer is fiduciary duties. So what is a fiduciary? Well, a fiduciary is someone who has undertaken to act on behalf of another person in circumstances involving trust and confidence. In simple terms, a fiduciary is somebody trusted to put someone else's interests ahead of their own. So who can be a fiduciary? Well, trustees are fiduciaries, but fiduciary duties extend much further. They extend to include company directors, business partners, agents, solicitors, certain senior employees of companies. Whenever someone is entrusted with responsibility for another person's interests, fiduciary obligations may arise. So what's the big idea? Well, at the heart of every fiduciary relationship is one concept: loyalty. The principal is entitled to the fiduciary's undivided loyalty, and for trustees that means the beneficiaries come first, always. Now, the core fiduciary duty, well, everything in this video can actually be reduced to two simple rules: the no conflict rule and the no profit rule. Let's take those one at a time. So the no conflict rule is where a trustee must not place themselves in a position where their personal interests conflict with the interests of the trust. Now, the problem here is obvious. Once self-interest enters the picture, there's a risk that personal gain will influence decision making, and the law wants to eliminate that risk. By comparison, we have the no profit rule, which is that a trustee must not make an unauthorized personal profit from their position. So if a trustee gains a profit because they are a trustee, the trust is generally entitled to that profit. Importantly, it does not matter whether the trustee acted honestly, and this is one of the strictest areas of equity. So why is the law so strict? Well, the courts take the view that human nature is human nature. And if people think they can profit from their position, they may be tempted to put themselves first. So equity adopts a deterrent approach. If trustees know they cannot keep the profit, they're less likely to try. So does it matter if the trust loses nothing? Well, no. And this often surprises many students. A trustee can be liable even where the trust has suffered no loss. The trustee has acted honestly. The trust has benefited from the transaction. The focus is on loyalty, not on loss. So when can trustees keep a profit? Well, before looking at breaches, we need to look at any exemptions that apply. And a trustee may keep a profit if the trust deed authorizes it, or if all fully informed adult beneficiaries consent, or if statute or a court order authorizes it. Without any of these forms of authorization, problems emerge very quickly. And the first major example of this is something called self-dealing. This occurs when a trustee buys property from a trust or sells property to the trust. And why is this a problem? Well, imagine the trustee is selling trust property to themselves. They are effectively acting on both sides of the transaction. As trustee, they want the highest possible price. As buyer, they want to pay the lowest possible price. As you can see, the conflict is obvious. Now, where self-dealing occurs, the beneficiaries can usually set the transaction aside. Importantly, the court does not ask whether the price was fair, does not ask whether the trustee was honest, or whether the trust benefited. the beneficiaries simply have the option of unwinding the transaction. So suppose Jane is a trustee. The trust owns a house, and after struggling to sell it for years, Jane purchases it herself. A year later, a new tram stop is announced nearby, and the value of that property increases rapidly. The beneficiaries may choose to set the transaction aside, with the increase in value then belonging to the trust, not to Jane. Now, trustees must also not compete against the trust. So suppose the trust owns a business. The trustees cannot establish a rival business and exploit opportunities for themselves. Doing so places personal interest ahead of the trust, and any resulting profits may have to be handed over. Can trustees charge fees? Well, the general rule is no. Trustees must act for free. There are exceptions though, and they are if the actual trustee authorises payment, if the beneficiaries agree, if the court authorises payment, or if statute authorises payment. Professional trustees are often entitled to reasonable remuneration. So suppose Mark is a financial advisor acting as the trustee. The trust instrument says nothing about fees. If the statutory conditions are met, Mark may be entitled to charge reasonable remuneration. His fellow trustee, who is not acting professionally, may not have the same entitlement. But expenses are different. So even unpaid trustees can usually recover properly incurred expenses, including travel costs, any professional fees they've incurred, administration expenses, and reimbursement of expenses is therefore not the same as remuneration. Fiduciary duties also prohibit profits made indirectly. So a trustee cannot make money on the side because of their permission. So imagine a trustee recommends a particular advisor. The advisor rewards the trustee with commission. That commission belongs to the trust, not the trustee. Why? Well, because the trustee's personal interests may have affected their recommendation. So if a trustee introduces a trust business to their own stockbroking firm and receives a commission, unless authorised, the commission must be paid over to the trust. Let's quickly look at director salaries, which is an area which often appears in exams. So suppose trust shares allow a trustee to become a company director. Can the trustee keep a director's salary? Well, the answer depends on why they became a director. If they only became a director because of the trust, they must generally surrender the salary. The trusteeship created the opportunity, the profit therefore belongs to the trust. If they would have become a director anyway, the trustee may keep the salary. The appointment there in those circumstances did not arise through the trust itself. Let's now look at using trust opportunities, because this is perhaps one of the most important areas. A trustee must not exploit trust opportunities, confidential trust information, or knowledge obtained through their fiduciary position for personal gain. Now, Boardman and Phipps is the classic case here. A solicitor acting for trustees gained valuable information about a company in which the trust held shares. Using that information, he purchased shares personally and made a substantial profit. The trust also benefited enormously, yet he still had to surrender his profit. Why? Because he only became aware of the opportunity through his fiduciary position. The opportunity belonged to the trust, not to him. The trust in this example did not lose anything. The trust could not have even pursued the opportunity itself. None of that mattered. The profits still had to be handed over. So what should a trustee do? Well, if a trustee wishes to take advantage of an opportunity personally, they should obtain beneficiary consent or court approval before acting. Trying to sort it out afterwards is a dangerous strategy. So what happens if fiduciary duties are breached? Well, the beneficiaries have two remedies. either a personal claim or a proprietary claim. Let's deal with them one at a time. When we deal with a personal claim, the beneficiaries can require the trustee to account for profits. In other words, hand the money over. This does not depend on proving loss. The trustee simply cannot keep the gain. Then we've got the proprietary claim. So sometimes the trustee uses the profit to buy other property, for example, shares, land, or other investments. The beneficiaries may claim that property itself, and this can be extremely valuable if the property has increased in value. So let's bring this all together. Every fiduciary case starts with the same question. Did the trustee put themselves first? If the answer is yes, alarm bells should be ringing. Look for self-dealing, competition, unauthorized remuneration, commissions, director salaries, misuse of opportunities, or misuse of confidential information. Then ask whether the trustee obtained proper authorization. So what's Bowdie's bottom line? Well, fiduciary duties are all about loyalty. Remember, no conflict, no profit. Trustees must put beneficiaries first. Honesty is not a defense. Lack of loss is not a defense. And any unauthorized profits must usually be surrendered. Because at the heart of every fiduciary relationship is one simple principle. You cannot use someone else's trust for your own personal advantage. And that's exactly what equity has spent centuries enforcing. Thank you very much for watching this video in the Bowdie short series. There are further videos in our Trust series available now. Please use the playlist that's available on our YouTube site to access further content. Thank you for watching.